All right, great. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for a presentation today hosted by Marcum Technology. Just need to go over a few housekeeping items before we jump into the presentation. Marcum LLP and Marcum Technology LLC have prepared these materials as part of an educational program. The information contained herein is of a general nature and is not intended to address the circumstances of any particular individual, entity, or case. While every effort has been made to offer current and accurate information, errors can occur. Furthermore, laws and regulations referred to in this program may change over time and should be interpreted only in light of particular circumstances. The information presented here should not be construed as legal, tax, accounting, or valuation advice. No one should act on such information without appropriate professional advice after a thorough examination of the particular situation. During today's program, you can submit your questions to our presenters using the Q&A feature at the bottom of the Zoom platform. They will get to as many questions as they can throughout and at the end of the webinar. We will provide a copy of the slides and a link to the recording to all attendees post-event. And if you'd like to receive continuing professional education credits for CPAs for attending today's session, you'll need to be active in the Zoom platform for a minimum of 50 minutes and answer 3 of the 4 polling questions that will appear on the screen at random points during the presentation. Each poll will be active for about 1 minute. There are no right or wrong answers, but be sure to select answer and click submit for tracking purposes. And now I'll pass it over to Buu-Linh Tran, Vice President of Financial Solutions at Marcum Technology.
Thank you, Erin. And good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on tips to close your books faster with financial management software. So the financial solutions we will focus today is on Sage Intacct. Good afternoon, my name is Buu-Linh Tran. I'm the VP in our financial solutions practice at Marcum Technology. Just a quick intro, I have over 20 plus years experience working with a number of financial solutions, ERP solutions to be specific, including Sage Intacct, of course, and then also Dynamics GP. I've spent most of my career working in the nonprofit industry. So, lots of experience in working with clients in not-for-profit. And joining me today is Mohammad. Mohammad, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Of course. Thank you, Buu-Linh. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mohammad Hourani. I am the Financial Solution Manager at Marcum. I am so excited to be with you here today, especially talking about my favorite subject, which is month-end closing. A little bit about myself. I have many years of international nonprofit experience. So I was working international nonprofit before joining Marcum here and work here supporting Sage Intacct and other F&A solutions.
Great. I'm very fortunate to have Mohammad join because Mohammad is actually doing most of the heavy lifting in this webinar.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. So our agenda for today, we just have a few slides to talk about who we are, and then we'll jump into talking about what is financial close, just to level set ourselves, on this particular topic. We will talk about key reasons for quick close. Why do a lot of people shoot for a quick close? What are we trying to achieve? I'll talk a little bit about what are some of the challenges that we see with our clients in terms of financial close, and then we'll talk a little bit of one of my favorite topics is that continuous planning journey. This is all tied together with that planning journey, and we have a little picture that they say a picture speaks 1,000 words, and seeing how this particular process fits into that journey. And then we're going to jump into really the meat of this presentation, which is looking at how you can leverage Sage Intacct to speed up that close process. So next slide, please. So who are we? Marcum. So Marcum Technology is part of the Marcum LLP family. Marcum LLP, it's a CPA firm, and we are 12th largest in the U.S. We're national. We have about 40 offices throughout, and we have more than 3,500 professionals. We service a number of industries within Marcum. As you can see down here, there's a number of industries that are listed. Both Mohammad and myself have a lot of experience in nonprofit and social services, but we also work with other industries as well. So within Marcum Tech, we have 5 pillars of services. I'm just going to go through this fairly quickly. We have cloud and infrastructure solutions where we help clients with supporting their infrastructure. So this would include things like cloud services, technology as a service, helping the clients that, especially smaller clients that may not have their own IT department, and they may outsource some of their IT support to us. And then we've got the managed IT services. I think I spoke too fast, but managed IT services is exactly what that does, is helping clients manage their IT infrastructure. And then we've got the cybersecurity and digital forensic, where we are helping clients with securing their business. And it's a huge practice for us in the cybersecurity, cybersecurity world. And then digital consulting is actually the practice both Mohammad and I belong to. And it's not very clear, but the last bullet there says financial ERP and FP&A solution. That's the practice that we're part of. And within the financial ERP and FP&A solution, we support a number of solutions. Sage Intacct being one of them. Sage Intacct is a true cloud-based solution. Another true cloud-based solution that we support is Acumatica. Acumatica tend to focus more on the heavy distribution, manufacturing, construction industry. And we support a number of budgeting solutions as well. They include Planful, Vena, and Martis. And other areas within digital consulting that we support includes RPA, that's the robotic process automation, and as well as business applications consulting as well, application development. So all of that just falls into our area. And then finally, strategic consulting, where we work with clients to provide assessment services. I know we do a lot of that where organizations have really grown and they need someone to come in and help them with the digital transformation process. So that really sums up all of our services within Marcum Tech. Next slide, please. Oh, and in order to get the CPE, please complete the polling question. So this is one of the 4 polling questions. So if you could just take a second to do that. But meanwhile, we're going to move on to the next slide. So this brings us to talk about what is financial close. So just so that we're on the same playing field here, our topic is really closing the books, right? Closing the book is part of the financial close. So it includes closing when we say book, closing your records, you're within your accounting system. Generating financial statements is also part of financial close. So after you've closed the books, you generate the financial statements, you review, you go through that process of reviewing the financials. It also includes after you've done your reconciliation and the number, you're very comfortable with the numbers, as part of this closing process, you're going to close out the period that you were in, and then you want to make sure that your new period is open. And then provide snapshot of the business health, financial health. So that is part of generating the financials, making seeing sort of where your numbers are falling, where are we in terms of the financial health of the organization. And then finally, quick and accurate close by leveraging continuous process improvement and ERP automation. So our focus on this webinar is going to focus more on the ERP automation side of that. But obviously, within your accounting operations, you should always be looking at ways to improve that accounting process, right? How do you improve that process so that you can, together with the automation, achieve a quick close? Next slide, please.
Yeah, exactly, Buu-Linh. So we have many reasons why we want to close our books, right? Many reasons. One of them that I have here, like forecasting. I cannot do forecasting if I don't have my books closed, right? So the first thing, I have to close my books in order to do the forecasting for the year. The other thing that I have, present financials to the board. Like some organizations, you share financial with the board, monthly basis, quarterly basis, whatever is the term. You want to have your books closed in order to produce the financials. Of course, you have donors. If you are a nonprofit, you have donors. You have third parties who are giving you like a fund. You want to report to donors. So you want to have your books closed in order to generate the financials. The last point that I have here, if you are closing your books on time and you keep watching your financials, like I run budget versus actuals, I have my own reports, I will be able to highlight any red flags earlier. The earlier, the better, right? I don't have to wait till year end to figure out what is going on. So those are the key points that I have here, or the key reasons why we want to have quick close.
They all sound reasonable. And let's talk about challenges with financial close. So we just listed some of the challenges. There obviously there may be other challenges out there. So, but these are some of the things that we've seen with our clients. So, what we quick close without compromising accuracy. So the identifying key accounts that need monthly, quarterly reconciliation. So, as you're closing, you're performing the close, if you're looking, one of the things that you're going to determine is, do all of your account needs to have a monthly, do you need to reconcile all of the accounts, right? So, obviously reconciling all of it, and it depends, also the number of accounts you have in your balance sheet. And the more accounts you have, there's just more effort. So I think that one of the things that we advise our client is to look at your balance sheet and determine what accounts do you need to reconcile on a monthly basis, what accounts that you can do it on a quarterly basis. And the other thing to also consider is when you're closing the subledger. So I have worked with organizations where we actually close the subledger on AP before the month end. I know that sounds crazy, right? But you could close your subledger AP on the 29th of the month or the 30th of the month, and not having to wait 5 days after the month closed to close your subledger.
Or 15 days.
Huh?
Or 15 days.
Or the 15th, right? And so, if you're consistent with that, right, that it could work for you, right? And also, if there's, you may say, well, there's, still invoices that we're waiting on, and, so then this is where you might, consider your materiality threshold, right? What is your materiality threshold? And for any items that are meeting those materiality thresholds, what you want to do is then make sure you're accrued for those items that are outstanding. So, so how you're reconciling these accounts really does impact impact the time it takes to close. And also keep in mind there are some sensitive accounts. So these sensitive accounts are what I call the intercompany accounts. Those are sort of my classic example of really sensitive accounts. So for those type of account, you probably wanted to reconcile it, on a monthly, unless there's not that much activity, in which case you can get away with quarterly. But those are some of the things to think about, in your closing schedule. Disparate and antiquated systems. So that can be a challenge with financial close, right? And so if you have multiple data sources scattered, meaning if you are, I just came across a nonprofit was working with where they are international. They have different accounting solutions that they're managing, and at the end of the, at the month end, they have to then consolidate all these. So those could be some of the challenges. In their cases, not only is data in multiple sources, but they're running different ERP solutions at the same time. And also not fully leveraging your ERP system. Hence the reason for why we have this webinar really, are you really leveraging the functionality and the automation that your ERP can offer you, right? And then lastly, remote team. I know that, as a result of COVID, many folks are working remote, and I think, there are efficiencies that you can gain from working remote. You're not incurring time for travel. You're gaining some time back. But also, I think importantly with remote team is the communication, right? Making sure there's sufficient communication that being take place so that we can, achieve that common goal. Next slide, please. So this is one of my favorite pictures that I actually had put this together, and really depicting that planning journey. So if you're looking at this, I actually presented this in our last webinar, which was on budgeting. But if you're looking at this, we're actually in step number 7, which is execution and monitoring, right? So that the whole close process is executing where the actuals are and generating financials to see where is my actual as compared to my budget. What are some of the variants? How do we need to address it? And are there things that has surfaced? For example, maybe there might be a grant or a contract that you're getting that you were anticipating, or maybe that there's changes to the staff that we need to account for now. So which we need to reforecast as new situations arise, right? And so, but you still have to do the execution and monitoring. And if we have what if case scenarios that have come up, then that's where you go to the next phase, which is the forecasting. Next slide.
Buu-Linh, we have a lot of things to cover, right?
We do. And we're going to try to get through as much as we can. So let's go through it. So we'll go through checklist. That is relatively new. It's been out for a while, but and then we're gonna go through it. So checklist. With our checklist, when we talk about checklist, we're talking about assignments. We're talking about task assignments, and you should always have a checklist as to who is doing what when it comes to reconciliation, and you can build that checklist right within Sage Intacct. So if you see here, if you go to the company under all, you'll see that there's a checklist, and then you add a checklist, and then you're assigning people to assignment, basically giving them a start end date, who it is, and then you can indicate, they can indicate as when they've completed this, a percentage of completion. And you can also have attachments as well as comments. A couple of things, you can even put this checklist in your dashboard. So, in your dashboards, you can just attach your checklist to the dashboards. You can create any checklist you want. The most popular one that everybody, I think, commonly uses is month-end checklist, right? Because we all need to close our book. So you can put one together. The other thing to note is that once you have a checklist, you can duplicate the checklist. So you don't need to recreate the checklist every month. You can just duplicate it and update it accordingly for next month's close and make any changes you need to the checklist accordingly. And when you assign people to the checklist, they will automatically get a notification. Hey, there's an assignment that is that you have to do. Now, who can you put on this checklist? It is business users that you can. So because we're talking about accountants, right? So I just wanted to give you a heads up. It can't just be anybody within the company who is not a user of this if they're not going to get alert. So it really needs to be a Sage Intacct user that you can assign for you to assign the checklist assignment to.
So one of the challenges that you mentioned, Buu-Linh, is remote team, right? So we can leverage the checklist for that purpose. So I can assign tasks to people and they will be notified, like we can see here the percentage complete, everything. So we can leverage the checklist in this case, right?
Yep, and it's within your, accounting solution, right? You don't have to maintain that in Excel outside of the solution.
Yeah, and this is out of the box, like it is not additional subscription.
Correct, and I'm glad you mentioned that. So you're already paying for it, whether you're using it or not, right? You're already paying for it, so this is part of the core.
Give it a try. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about now the closing period. Okay, so closing period is a regular part of month-end closing, right? It is part of the process. So you can see here that we have two close instead of one close. So we are talking about closing the subledger. This is what you talked about, Buu-Linh, like if we can close before the month end even, and we have the general ledger closing. So subledger, what are the subledgers? Accounts payable, account receivable, cash management. So those are the subledgers. So I can close the subledger and I can keep the general ledger open. Let's say I close my accounts payable, AP, on the 30th. Let's give it like on the end of the month, I close my AP. So I can still do transactions in the general ledger. So I want to keep time for myself to do adjusting entries, for example, if I want to do overhead recovery, revenue recognition. So I can do those transactions in the general ledger. I don't need the AP ledger, subledger for that. So that's why this is one subledger I don't want to worry about. I close the subledger, I focus on the general ledger. Once I am done with the general ledger, everything is in place. I did my overhead recovery, my revenue recognition, then I can go ahead and close the period. When you close the general ledger, all the subledgers, even if you have them open, they will be closed automatically because this is the general ledger, this is the pool, this is the parent. Once you close it, it will close all the subledgers automatically. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I will be navigating between the slides and Sage Intacct. So I will show like everything to you in action. So I will show you how we can do it in Sage Intacct. So let me switch now to my favorite part, Sage Intacct. Okay, so in Sage Intacct, applications, we are talking about subledgers, right? So subledger, one of the subledger is accounts payable. We can see here that we have subledger, I have open and I have close and open. So if I want to close the period, I will click on close. I can select the period. Let's say I want to close September and I can hit the close. You can see I'm closing the period from top level, which means that if I close the period, if I have entities, it will close all the entities as well. You can do it by entity. So you have the option that you can close it by entity instead of closing all the entities. Buu-Linh, you mentioned opening period, right? The good news in Intacct, you don't have to open period. Period is already open. So all what you have to do is to close the period. Once you are done, you close your period. Okay, so I close my AP. Okay, let's say on the 10th or the 15th that we close the whole month. Then I can go to general ledger, close. I can select the period from here. Let's say September, and I close my books. Let's say I close the period, everyone is happy. Then we figured out that, oh, there is a transaction that we missed. And Buu-Linh, you mentioned materiality, and this is material for us. We want to pause this transaction in the prior period. What are the options here? We have two options. One option, I can, okay, talk to my controller, or like if the controller is aware of that, we can open the period, pause the transaction in the prior period, update our financials. This is the most important thing because I don't want a transaction that is impacting my financials that I already shared, right? I am aware of the transaction. I can open the period, do the changes or pause the transaction, close the period again, then recreate the financials, which is fine. Another option, which I prefer for year end, which is the adjusting entry. There is an option in Intacct that you can do adjusting entries. If I go general ledger, I have here called adjusting. So you can create adjusting transactions. The beauty about adjusting transactions, you don't have to open the period. So if I have September closed, I can create adjusting transaction and I can put it in September, though the period is closed. And the other thing, if you try to do adjusting entry in an open period, the system will not allow you. This is adjusting entry only for closed period. So I advise or I recommend to use the adjusting when you are doing the year and the closing. When you share your financial, let's say with the auditors, and later you have any adjustment you want to do, you can leverage the adjusting entry.
So one of the questions we get asked sometimes is, do we have to do the subledger close, or do we have to close the general ledger as part of our month end? Oh, we have polling question number 2. So if you can take a second to respond to that. And the answer is no, you don't have to. You can still go through the month end reconciliation. You can still post, generate your financials and go through the, the rest of these your month end process without closing. But closing the subledger and general ledger is just best practice. You're really safeguarding, especially if you have a big team and you have multiple people in AP. You want that level of control to be assured that people are not posting, the last month, because it's just too easy to do that, right? And so, and that's the purpose of the close, is for you to leverage that control.
Yeah, so easy to do that and not easy to track that, right?
That's right.
So that's why I want to control it.
Yeah.
All right. So, all right, bank reconciliation. I have many slides about bank reconciliation here. Okay, so bank reconciliation, like we cannot say that we close the month and we are done and I don't have my bank reconciled. This is something that I want to do on a monthly basis, right? So there are some accounts I can keep it for quarterly basis, but for bank reconciliation, definitely I will do it on monthly basis. So in Intact, we can do bank reconciliation. I can do it inside the system, right? And we have different options also here to do bank reconciliations within Intact. The first one that we have on the list here, which is traditional manual reconciliation. We call traditional. Why? If you don't have the system, what will you do? I will download bank statement from the bank. I will download the general ledger or report from the system. And here I have Excel, here I have PDF or 2 Excel, and I will start matching them. This is what I do traditional way. We can do this part out in Intact. So what will happen here? I will download from the bank statement. I will have it on another screen. And I can do the reconciliation directly in Intact. Intact will show me the transactions in Intact. And I can, like, for each transaction, I can check this match. Anything I leave, the system will consider that those are outstanding transactions, and I can reconcile the bank. I can print reconciliation out of the system. But here again, like, I don't have the bank transactions in the system. I have the bank transactions and like Excel or PDF outside the system. So this option, some of our clients, they like this option because it's easy, like it is very fast to do it. And if you have ZBA bank account, you need this option. You need to go through the traditional manual reconciliation because ZBA, at the end, it's a zero balance account. At the end, it's zero. And in between, you have like different transactions, but the net is zero. So it is easier to go and do it through the first option, which is traditional manual reconciliation. Option number 2, bank feed. Let's see what do we have bank feed. Bank feed, we can connect the bank to Sage Intact. So what happens, every 4 hours, the bank will send transactions directly to Sage Intact. The most common questions that I get, okay, Mohammad, if this bank is sending the transaction, it means if we have the transaction already in the system, we will have duplication. The answer, no. So the system will send the bank transactions. They are sitting in a place called bank transactions. I will show you where in a minute. So they will be sitting there. They are not going to hit your general ledger unless you go to the transaction in the bank and you take an action to create a transaction in the general ledger out of it. Otherwise, it is there for you to do the reconciliation. When I'm doing the reconciliation and I'm using the bank feed, I'm not going to download the bank statement and have it on separate screen. Inside Intact, I'm going to show you. You will have like tab called Intact, another tab called Bank, and you will do the reconciliation. This is the most accurate one. It is time consuming, definitely. And the other thing here we want to take into consideration, we want to check if our bank does support the bank feed. And if, let's say, last year, your bank was not supporting bank feed, you have to check again because they keep adding. So all the time, keep checking. So if it is not supported now, maybe in the future it will be supported. Okay, so bank feed, as I said, the bank will be sending the transaction direct to the system. In order to see the transactions, what we want to do, we want to go to our permission. We want to make sure that we have access to, as you see here, like bank transactions, that we can see bank transaction. We can ignore, we can manual match. All right, so The other thing also we want to consider anytime we are going to use the bank field or the import file, which I'm going to talk about also, we want to make sure that we have rules and rule sets. What are the rules? What are the rule set? So, you know, when you are doing reconciliation, what I'm looking at, I look at the date of the transaction, I look at the amount, and if they match, okay, I will say that those transactions, they match each other. Or let's say I look at the document number here in the bank and the document number in my transaction, if I have it at the time when I create my transaction, and I will say those transactions are matching. We can let the system does this for us. So instead of us like doing this manually, we can create rules in the system. So those are called rules. So we can tell the system anytime you see date that in the bank that does match with what we have in the transaction plus the amount, consider them match. You will tell me, okay, so we might have same amount, same date, but they don't match, right? That's why like it is not like something that you cannot change. If I go to my reconciliation and I see that there are transactions automatically matched by the system, I can unmatch them. So if I see that this 1,000 in the bank, the system match it with a transaction that is for 1,000 in my general ledger, let's say, but actually they are not the same, I can unmatch and I can match it with the right one. So you have.
So you're telling the system how to match up the bank transactions against the transactions in your ledger.
Exactly. All right. So those are the matching rules. So we create the matching rules as you see here. So we are like which bank transaction field, the operator like equal, like to what value if you want, like to date, what, and then you match it to the field in intact transaction. Okay, so rule set. I can have different rules. And if I have more than one bank account, let's say I have one rule that is for Bank of America, but I want different rule for, let's say, TD Bank. So I can have different rules and I can have different rule sets. So the rule set is where you assign the rules that you created to the bank. So this is the use of the rule set. Okay, here another slide about rule and rule set. Rule is what makes the match. How do you want to match the transaction? Rule set is the container of the rules. So I can have more than one rule in the rule set. Okay, so again, let's go and see it in action. I will switch now to Sage Intacct. All right, so when we talk about bank reconciliation, this is how I navigate in Intacct. When I talk about bank reconciliation, it means that I'm talking about cash. It means it should be under cash management, right? Cash management. So here we have the bank. So, and you see here we have bank transactions. If you have bank feed, the bank transactions, you can access them here. If I click here, I don't have bank feed connected to my demo, so I will not see anything here. But usually if you have bank feed, so then you will see bank transactions populating here. All right, so we want to do we want to do rules. So you see here, setup, I go to rules. I have one rule that I created, which is rule 1. I call it rule 1, and this is to match date and amount. So let's see, what do we have here? All right, if I scroll down, I am telling the system, match any bank transaction field that has posting date equal to posting date and Intacct. For amount, the same thing. You have different options. Description, document number as you see here. So you have different options to set your rules. So those are the main fields that I use to build my rule. And after I build the rule, I go and I have to assign the rule using the rule set. So on the rule set here, I'm selecting this rule, and under accounts, this is the bank account that I'm assigning the rule to. All right, so I want to do bank reconciliation, all bank. Let's pick this one. Continue. So as you can see, I have Intacct tab and I have bank tab. Because I have bank transactions, I can see bank tab. But if I use the option number 1, which is just like traditional one, I will not have this bank tab. I will see only the Intacct tab. All right, so what I'm showing here, same applicable for bank file import. Okay, so we mentioned that you can have bank feed, but let's say your bank is not supporting bank feed. You can still have the transactions and intact, but you want to upload them through file, import file. So there is a template that you can use for that purpose. There's a template, and then when you do your reconciliation, you hit import, and you import the transactions into intact. So when you download the transaction from the bank, it is not in the format that you can use in order to import to intact. You have to put it in a special format, special templates, and you can import. Okay, so because we like Excel also, so what we did here, we created a macro where you can like dump in your transactions. So this is customized one. So what I'm showing here is one of the banks that's not supported by they don't support bank feed.
And Mohammad, should we be looking at the Excel? We're seeing the.
Sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, here is Excel. Yeah, thank you, Buu-Linh. Okay, yeah. So I have here the bank statement. So it is in Excel. This is same as what I got from the bank, but it is not the format that we can import to intact. I have here generate file. It is a macro now. Generating for me the file. I have it now generated. So this is the file. This is the format that I can import to intact. So this is something we can help with. Create a macro in order to convert your bank statement into the format that you can use in order to import the transactions to Sage Intact. So once I have this, what I will do when I go to bank, I want to do the reconciliation, let's say. You see, I have here import. I can import the statement that I just generated. Okay, let's go back to the presentation.
So just a quick comment on the bank rec. Bank rec is generally done monthly, but when we say monthly, we don't necessarily mean monthly waiting to the end of the month. Certainly if your bank is supported with bank feed, you can, and you get the updates every 4 hours, right? You could do your bank rec weekly or even daily. I would start, if you're doing it monthly, maybe switch over to weekly. And then, there's just the more frequent you do, the point here is that you get it done before the month end. That's one thing, one last thing to worry about, right? So, just a quick comment on that.
Okay, recurring transactions. If you create the same transaction on a regular basis, you can save time by having the system automatically create the transaction for you, right? So what are the transactions that I create every month, the same transaction? I have here like a few examples: prepayment, depreciation, revenue recognition, release from restriction, but you see here between parentheses, I have time restriction, okay? So prepayment, when we pay or something in advance, every month I have to go and expense part of it. So let's say I paid 1 year insurance. So every month I have to go and amortize this payment, right? When do we remember that, okay, there's a payment that I have to amortize as the time when I'm doing my reconciliation, right? When I'm doing my reconciliation, oh, okay, there's transactions that I have to create in the system. What we can do here, we can set a recurring transaction for prepayment. So anytime I pay something in advance, I can in parallel go and create my schedule. So this is something that I don't have to worry about. Every month, the system will pause the transaction for me. I paid, let's say, $12,000 for insurance for 1 month, for 1 year, and every month I have to amortize $1,000. So the transaction will be every month like $1,000 expense, $1,000 will be credit for the prepayment. After 12 months, it will stop automatically. So let's see how we can do that. So you can see here, like I have general ledger. Under general ledger, we have recurring, which I can use. Then what we want to do, we want to define the transaction. What is the debit? What is the credit? And we want to set the schedule. We want to set the schedule to tell the system, okay, when it will be the start date, like how many, the occurrence, like how many 12 months, every 1 month, let's say. And here you see that I will be getting notification to my email when it is posted. Let's see it in action. All right, so intact. Okay, general ledger, recurring, leave, insurance expense. So let's see this one, add it. Okay, I want to debit this one, this account, the expense, and I want to credit the prepayment. You can put the description, add attachment, same as the regular transaction. Oh, we have polling question. Okay, so then on this tab, the schedule, I want to define the schedule. The date, ending on, never, end date, you can define end date. So here I'm saying 12 months. So the system will understand that after 12 months, it will be done.
And also, if you go back to the transactions in that journal entry, because Sage leverages dimension. Yeah. So when you're entering your recurring entry, you can reference who the vendor is, right? So you can reference, you know, the vendor that's related to that prepaid, for example. And then, of course, there's the description. You have a reference number. You could even reference back to the invoice number if you wanted to, just so you have that little trail to go back to the source document that created this prepaid to begin with, right?
Right.
So,
right. Yeah, well, so the best practice here, that this is what I always mention. Anytime I have prepayment transaction, I want to have the vendor as required field. Otherwise, how can I do my reconciliation? How can I track by vendor? So that's why, like in the account setup, I set the vendor as required field. So then when you are doing any transaction hitting the prepayment, the vendor is required. Yeah, good one. Okay. So let's go back to our slides.
And interestingly, we don't have a lot of clients that use recurring. So I think, you know, I think it's one of those functions that, in our opinion, is underutilized.
Yes.
And you can gain a lot by leveraging the recurring transaction.
Yeah, right. So, for example, release from restriction, time restriction. You know, when you get fund from donor and this is time restricted, you know how much you are going to recognize or release from restriction every month. So you can set it as a schedule. You don't have to worry about it. Same for depreciation, same amount, unless like you are getting new assets. So same amount, so you can set it as a recurring schedule.
Yeah, it does take a little bit of discipline, right? Because when you incur it, you have to set it up. But I think over time, it really pays off.
Yes. Okay, release from restriction. So we just talked about release from restriction, but we were talking about the time restriction. Now we are talking about the purpose-based restriction. Purpose-based, so assume that I don't have this option in the system. This is something that just came recently, I believe beginning of this year or like end of last year. What we do usually when we want to do revenue recognition, or sorry, release from restriction, purpose-based. So at month end, let's say, or a quarter, whatever, like the terms that you have, I check how much I spent on each project, and then I do transaction to release from restriction, right? I move from restricted revenue to unrestricted revenue. This is what I do. So I have to check how much I spent for that period in order to do my transaction or my release transaction. Actually, the system now can do it for you. So you don't have to worry about doing the calculation outside the system. All what you want to do here is to define the criteria for the recognition and what are the dimensions, and the system will do the transaction for you. Okay, so of course, like some of the things that I'm showing, you want to configure. So like some of you, if you go to a general ledger, you will not see restriction release, but this is a configuration. And the good news, this is out of the box also, no additional subscription for that. So it is available for you. Just you wanna configure that, and we can help you with the configuration. So what we wanna do, we want to define the dimensions. We want to generate the transaction, and we have release log. Like at any time I can go and check, okay, what are my releases? Like if there any issue, like for example, if the system tried to do the release, but you don't have expenses, you will see that also. Okay, you know that I like to show everything in intact, how it works. So let me show this one to you quickly, because we don't have.
And is it part of the core?
It is part of the core plan. It is just a matter of configuration. You want to enable it, it's part of the core, right? Okay, so generate restriction. Okay, so I have the restrict dimension. I have the grayed out because the first time you are using this one, you have to define the dimension and you cannot change it later. You want to define the dimensions that you are going to use for your releases. So here I defined a dimension, we call it font. So, okay, this is a date, which journal. I want to get a notification, of course. So you see here which account you want to use, satisfaction of restriction, GL account. This one also is grayed out. I have here temporary restricted and unrestricted. What I want to do every time I run the releases, so I will go and change my fund source, which is the project, grant, or can be department, can be anything. It depends what you define here. You see here, I define the program. I want to do my releases based on program, so that's why it's grayed out. So the first time you do it, they will not be grayed out, so you can define what are the dimensions. The next time they will be grayed out, and you can just, every time you come here, you change date, and you can change the project or a grant or program, whatever you have. And what happens if you go to view release log, you will see the transaction. So here, yeah, I have failed because I don't have expenses. Okay, but you will see the error message also. Okay, coming back to our presentation.
Now, the one thing I will say with the release is that you have to go through each of the project or the grant. You know, maybe in a later release, they can bundle it all together.
Yeah, but still, like, I see it good because you will be doing this in Excel in all cases, right? Yeah. You are still doing it outside the system. Yeah. Okay, allocations. Allocations. So, at month end, we do like different type of allocations. We do overhead recovery, we do like fringe benefit, share cost allocation, and you might have many other things. At the beginning, I had only dynamic allocation. Then I added to it something that I also going to talk about, which is the transaction allocation. What is dynamic allocation? Dynamic allocation, I call the fancy allocation. Fancy allocation because it is so smart. It's called advanced allocation also. So the system will do the basis of the distribution for you, and the system will create the transaction for you. Let's say I do the distribution of the shared allocation cost based on employee salary, like how much I have like salaries on each department. This is how I do the calculation. I have one client, they used to spend like days just to get the calculation and do the transaction. Now it is just one click. We defined in the system that, okay, I want to do the distribution based on salaries for that period, allocate 100%, let's say. Those are the dimensions that I want to hit. It's defined. So every month, what you want to do, just go and generate the transaction. And the system will do the calculation for you, and the system will do the transaction for you. That's why it is like advanced allocation, and really it's saving a lot of time. This is additional subscription. That's why
I was going to say, this fancy allocation is not part of the core.
It is not part of the core. Yeah, it's worth it. Definitely if you are doing because how you want to look at it here. My time is cost, right? I'm spending a lot of time in order to prepare this allocation. I can be spending it on analysis rather than just like doing Excel work and this manual work. Let the system do that for me. Yeah. Okay, so this is one option.
This is the one module I think it pays for itself, I have to say.
Yeah. So as you can see, I can go after I have the transaction, the allocation defined, I can go and I can select which one I want to run. Even I can group them. I can have let's say the three allocations I want to run at the same time. So then the system will run for me. I will get notification and I have a log here. As you can see, allocation log. I can see pass, fail, queue, whatever. The one that I added, which is transaction allocation, this is out of the box, no additional subscription, and I like it. Here, like the transaction allocation, so you want to define the percentages. So some organizations I see that they have the same allocation, same percentage for the whole year. Then why to use the dynamic allocation and pay for additional subscription? Just use the transaction allocation. So if you are able to get your percentages for the basis for the distribution with minimal work, and you have the same percentage that you use often, then use the transaction allocation. Okay, so let me show you the transaction allocation, how it works. So transaction allocation, you can allocate by percentage. This is the most useful one. Exact amount, you can accept the exact amount, or like fixed amount, but okay, you can put a logic for the over or under. After you create the allocation, what you will do, you will go to the transaction. There's also configuration things. So you have it, but you might not see it now in your transaction because something configurations that we have to enable for you. But once you have it configured or enabled, when you go to create any transaction, you will see like a field here or box for allocation. So then you can pick the allocation that you created. You pick the allocation and the system automatically will distribute the cost that you have in this line over what you defined in your allocation. So let's say I have 10% department X, 50% department Y, or whatever. The system will do the calculation for you and will distribute for you. The other use of this one, if you are able to have the allocation at the time when you are coding your transaction, you can use it straightforward. Some of them, they wait till month end in order to create the allocation. So what they do usually, anytime they have an expense, they charge this expense to like dummy department or dummy, let's say, project, whatever. At month end, they go and they check how much they have on that dummy project or department, and they distribute using the allocation to the right departments that they feed in at month end. Right department, right program, right project, whatever dimension you want to have. Okay, so this is allocations.
The other comment to make here is that, so this is based on a predefined percentage. We've actually worked with clients where, it's a two-step process where we have a financial reports that determines what percentage there are. It is a two-step process. You run a financial to figure out what the percentage, and then you can import, because you can import the allocation. So you can tee it up with an Excel and then just import it and then run the allocation, right? So you're not paying for the advance, but it's quasi-automated. It is more than one step, and so that's something you can consider.
Okay, statistical transactions. During the month, we are doing transactions. Those are financial transactions. Financial transactions, they are hitting our financials. They are monetary transactions, right? I have money there involved. I have another type of transaction, which is statistical transaction. Statistical, they are non-financial transaction or non-financial data. I can track certain things in the system that they are not financial, like FTE. I want to know like full-time equivalent staff. I want to run a report. This is what I use in my previous work. Like I had a report FTE. I can get the percentage charge on each department. I used to get that report, and based on that report, I was creating the allocation. So that's why when you mentioned, okay, I have to create a report, then yes, this is what I use. I use the FTE report. Another use of the statistical account, there are many uses. So here I just listed the three. The PTO, paid time off. I want to track the paid time off. I can create statistical journal entries, create or import. So I don't have to key in like manually. I can import also for PTO, and I can design reports for PTO. For program reporting, if we are doing distribution, I want to like import distribution. Like another client asked me if we can have carbon dioxide. Okay, a statistical account. So many things. So here you want to be creative and create whatever you want, and then create reports accordingly.
Right.
Okay.
And you can report statistical transactions in your dashboards as well. Especially with performance cards where, or KPIs, you can track, changes to the statistical transactions. You can compare against budget, compare against prior year. So I agree with you, Mohammad. I think, statistical accounts are underutilized with many of our clients. And I think that it's a great way to capture results and review those results against, the financial performance.
Right. Okay, so the last item I have here, open API to integrate with other systems. So Sage Intacct is open API. It has open API. What does it mean? We can connect system to other systems. As long as the other systems, they have also open API, we can connect them directly. So you have different type of integrations here. You have seamless integration, like Sage Intacct, just giving an example with Salesforce, seamless integration. Sage Intacct with Vena, same thing. So Sage Intacct and Bill.com, like for AP. So you can see I mentioned here like CRM, AP, AR, payroll, distribution. So you have many things. As long as the system has open API, it means that you can connect it to Sage Intacct. What are the advantages? If you have seamless integration or integration between two systems, you don't have to do double entry. I don't have to go do the transaction like in the AP system and then do the same transaction in Intacct. I don't have to worry about it. Anytime I create the transaction, let's say in Bill.com, automatically it will be created in Sage Intacct. So I do it in one place. Same thing for Salesforce or any other system that has integration with Sage Intacct. So what you want to do in this case, okay, we have integration between systems, but I still want to do reconciliation between the systems at month end. So I want to make sure that, okay, when I run, let's say, the AP balance in Sage Intacct, it should match what I have in Bill.com, right? So this is one of these of the controls that I should have in place at month end. Okay, so we have 5 minutes left. We are on time. So
that's
usually,
great.
Yeah, usually we are active on webinars.
I know. I was concerned that we might not be able to get through all of it, so I'm glad we were able to get through. So,
funny questions. The last one.
Oh, the last one, yes. So if you can take a second to respond to that. We're getting to the end of our webinar. So we are very active in our learning community, through our learning community. So the next webinar we have is the Sage Intacct 2022 R4 release. This is the What You Should Know series. We have been doing this for a number of years now. And so it's a great way. It's another technical presentation, just like this one, but it's a great way for us to relate to, just everyone, anybody in the community that are interested in Sage Intacct, what's the new functionality that's coming out on a quarterly basis. So if you're interested, feel free to sign up for this webinar. And just as an FYI, Marcum does provide number of webinars, not just this. We're doing our presentation through our Marcum Tech, but within the LLP organization as well, they do a lot of webinar, and you can find all of the webinars through this website, which is the marcumevents.com. So this really concludes our presentation. I hope that you were able to benefit from this presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. You have our contact, and I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Aaron. Bye.
Bye-bye.